All right, so again, today the idea is between now and no later than 10 o'clock, we both get a break in here and we go through the Path of Light Yoga Studio for Chapter 4. What we want to get to, if you look up on the screen here, is this should be our homepage when we get done today. All right, so you'll notice we've got a logo on here. We've got a graphic here, a graphic here. Also, you may or may not have noticed, again, if you look up on the screen, they've got or in your book, they've got the web page, they've got a background for it. The page is kind of in a box. And then behind it, they have a purple, I guess it's purplish type of background. All right, so that's what we want the home page to look like. In addition, here is what our classes page will look like. Again, you'll notice the same thing up on top here, and we notice another picture. All right, and then finally, we're going to create the schedule page. Now, I don't know why she does it like this, but she does. We're going to create the schedule page, but we're going to modify that right away in the next chapter, because this is not put in as a table, even though it's tabular data. So we will come back and we will have basically the equivalent of a table in there in the next chapter. Now, if you do look at your book, or if you look at your syllabus, what you'll see in there is tomorrow it says that we're going to have the test, and then I think I don't know if it's Monday or not, so let's see, I brought it up here. So today, we're going to complete, you have time to complete the labs. We're doing the Path of Light. Tomorrow, it says that I am going to, after the written test, I'm going to lecture on chapters 5, brief, and 6. All right? When I say brief on 5, what I'm going to do is I'm going to build you a table. And I'm just going to build it right in front of you. And it's not that you have to write it down. All the information that I give you will be in chapter 5. But I want to very quickly, and I'm talking about 15 minutes or so, go through the stuff that's in chapter 5. You're not tested on that stuff. All right, just so you know, there's no test on chapter 5. The next test you take will be on a combination of chapters 4 and 6. All right, but we will go over that, and then we're going to go into chapter 6, and I think I mentioned to you before, it's one of the harder chapters in the book because it's going to talk about CSS positioning. Then when we come back Tuesday of next week, notice you're going to have lab time, the whole period. We'll do the Path of Light yoga thing for the first hour or so as we've been doing, but the rest of the period will be lab all day Tuesday. Notice, lab all day Wednesday. Notice, lab all day Thursday. Is there a theme there? And you're going to have some assignments on CSS positioning. I have to make sure I do this. What I want to do is I want to give you hard copies of those and give you those tomorrow. I don't really want you to work on them during the break, but sometimes people want to get ahead, or you at least want to see them. So at least you'll have hard copies of those assignments if you do want to start on them. If you don't, it's not a problem because, again, you'll have 3 lab days to work on them. All right? And then Friday, so a week from tomorrow, we'll have, now notice this, written test, chapter 6, beginning of class, like we've done. Then the hands-on. The hands-on is over 2 days because it's more complex. So what I'll do is I'll give you the first half of the hands-on on Friday and then the second half on Monday. And I'm sorry it works out like that. It just does day-wise. All right? But what I don't want you to do is say, well, geez, I'm going to sit and think about it all weekend. Don't do that. All right? And I know that's real easy for me to say, but I've been a student. Heck, I'm taking classes online now, so I know what that's like. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do, now I've started to do this with the assignments. You don't have to do it, but I want to show you real quickly what I'm doing. There's the test review that we're going to go over later. All right, so what I sent you last time was this, Path of Light, and just so you see it, you've got both the chapter 2 stuff in there, and that's what we started with. Home and classes, so there was absolutely no CSS in there, just 2 HTML files. All right, so that was what the first assignment was, but you didn't have to do it. So the second one for chapter 3, this is what we did in class the other day. we started to add this. So if for some reason yours didn't come out and it didn't look exactly the way it was supposed to, you should have this now. All right? So there's the home and there's the classes. Right now the schedule says doesn't go anywhere because we haven't created that page yet. And the same thing with the contact because we haven't created the page yet. Just so you know, I believe we don't create the contact form till approximately chapter 9. That's on forms. All right? So we'll get to it at that time. So we did this. What we want to get to today, and I think I showed you this the other day, but I'm going to show it to you again. I've gone through this exercise already twice, but what we're going to do today is we're going to get through chapter 4. When we get through that, we're now going to have this. This will be our home page. This will be our classes page. This will be our schedules page or schedule, and we still haven't done the contact page. So that's what we hope to get to. The last thing I want to tell you before we start is this won't look perfect. We're I don't know if you've ever heard this word before in terms of computerese. What we're doing, at least for a couple things in this chapter, is we're doing hacks. You may or may not have heard of a hack. A hack is basically a way of getting something done which may not be the most moral, best, right way to do it, but it's a way of doing it. And the reason I'm telling you that is these pages aren't going to look perfect with some of the positioning because in chapter 6 we learn CSS positioning. So we learn how to actually position them with CSS. Until that time we're going to position them, but we're going to use hacks. For instance, in the image tag, we're going to say image align equal right, which you aren't supposed to do. That's one of the tags that's been deprecated for HTML5. But since we haven't gone through positioning yet, that's the way we're going to do it. All right? Okay. So then, taking it from the top, the first thing that we're asked to do here, come on, create a new folder for this case study. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the chapter 3 stuff that either you have or the one I gave you and copy the entire folder to another folder that I'm going to call chapter 4. All right? So that's the first thing I'm going to do. Then it says to modify the home page as shown. Well, we're going to start with that. So I'm going to come out here. So notice, as the saying goes, nothing up my sleeve. I just have a chapter 2 and a chapter 3. I'm going to right mouse click on the chapter 3 folder, choose copy, right mouse click again, choose paste. By default, it'll call it chapter 3 copy. I'm going to change the name to chapter 4. Make sense? So far that's all we've done is we've literally made a copy of chapter 3 and we're calling it chapter 4. All right? So by the end of the period today, what's going to change in here is we're going to have a bunch of stuff. In other words, we're going to have the schedule page. We're also going to have an images folder. Hopefully you saw this because I screwed up. One of the things I sent you yesterday after these files, I sent you the image files as well. So you have those. All right? If you need to go back and take a second to add them, then please do. But if you look, come on. All right. But if you look here for class, it says, and here are the associated images. That was all the images for chapter 4. So I'm going to right mouse click on here. I'm going to do a save link as, and I'm just going to drop it right into my chapter 4 folder. All right? In fact, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'm going to just drop it right here. And that was interesting. Okay, so images. I don't even know what the heck this is. So images.zip, I'm going to save it right there. All right, so it's not letting me do that. I'll just save it to the desktop and move it there then. All right. So that images.zip is right here. Okay, I'm going to grab it and drag it over here. So I'm going to move it right there, and then I'm going to You all know this, that if I grab this zip file and I drag it into here, that one of the things I can do is extract it, which means open it up and put it in there. All right, so that's what I'm going to do. So the reason I'm showing you that is what I now have is in Chapter 4 is I have the images folder. And unfortunately, I've got images within images, which I don't like. So in this images folder, I have these images. That's the door, you know, path of light. That's the door that they're going to show in there. What is it? What else is in there? Yeah. This is the heading that we're going to put in there. I showed you the door. This is the yoga lounge, and that's the yoga mat. So those are what we're going to use, okay? Just one thing to tell you before we start. If you look up on the screen here, notice the lounge. It says 900 by 300. Then if I go to the mat, it says 900 by 300. It's kind of nice when you're going to be flipping from page to page, if you're going to have the same kind of photo on each page, to have it be the same size. Even if it's just off by a few pixels, you know, you're going to see like a little blip when you go from page to page. That's why I've told you in the past that GIMP, you know, I told you that yesterday, that's a tool that you can use to try to line things up the same way. One thing you can do, let's suppose that I have an image that happens to be 300 by 300. So in other words, it's 300 pixels wide and it's 300 pixels tall, okay? I can literally, when I put it on a page, I can sit there and say, for example, 500 by 800. I can do that. I can change the width and I can change the height. The problem is it'll look distorted. So you can do it, but it'll kind of look like this, sort of out of focus. And you probably won't want that to happen. That's not a good way of doing things. That's another hack. So it's not that you can't do it that way. It just doesn't look very professional to do it that way. All right? Okay. So I've got pretty much everything set up in here. And of course now I, for some reason, remove that. All right. What I've started to do when I go over these exercises is I grab for each page, I literally grab all the instructions. So task 1 tells us to create a folder on the hard drive. We did that. Copy all the folders. We did that. Bring in the images. We did that. So we've done task 1. Okay? For task 2, they tell us to do this. Okay? It says launch a text editor, open the index.html file from your Yoga 4 folder. I don't care, call it whatever you want. Modify it to look similar to the web page. So what I did was I grabbed everything from here. All right, just literally grabbed everything from there, copied it, came back in here, opened up my index, and brought the whole thing in as a comment. Again, you don't have to do this, but to me, now I've got everything that I'm supposed to be doing here. I can double check it as I do it. All right? So I want to go over all of these comments as we get started. Code an image tag for the yogadoor.jpg just above the H2 element. So in other words, it's going to go right there. That should make sense to everyone. Okay? So we're going to put an image tag in there in just a second. Be sure to include alt, height, and width attributes. Well, we know now that when we come here, we want yoga door. If I put my mouse over it, it says it's 225 by 300. All right? So that's what we'll put in there for the width and for the height. Also, configure the image to the right by using the image align equal right. As I told you previously, that's a hack. So we're purposely putting a hack in here. All right? Notice the W3 HTML validator will indicate that the align attribute is invalid. But we'll fix that in Chapter 6. As it says in Chapter 6, you'll learn how to use what's called the float property, which some people like and some people find to be a real pain in the butt. All right, so we're going to do all that in just a second. Then it says, save and test your new HTML page. Now notice again, it'll be similar, but it says, you'll notice that a few final touches are missing, and it says you'll configure these with CSS in Task 5. So don't worry if it doesn't look perfect right now. All right? So I'm going to come down to the H2 tag right here, and it says right up above it, we want to put in an image tag. All right? And the first thing we have to put in there, remember, what's the one required attribute for an image tag? Source. So the source is going to be equal to, and you have to make sure you put this in right. Please look up on the screen here. You may or may not have noticed what I did was under my images, you might have another images folder. You know, you might have images. I moved mine out, so I have just one images folder. And the reason I'm telling you that is when you put this stuff in, if it doesn't show correctly, you probably have it pathed wrong. Again, this was 225 by 300. So what I want to do, source equal images slash yogador.jpg. I like to put each one of these tags on a separate line. You don't have to do that. You don't have to do that. So source equals this, width equals, I think it was 300. Height equals 225. Again, I believe those are right. I should look one last time. No, it's 225 by 300. I got them in reverse. Sorry. That's 225 and that's 300. Now, I asked you, Brady was right when he said this, what's the one required tag for an image? And that is the source tag. The other tag that's basically referred to as being required is that alt tag. And remember that alt tag is used for two different purposes. It is used both in case your image doesn't show, you put a wrong path or a wrong image name or something, so you get something there. Plus it's shown for people who are sight impaired. That's the message that their screen reader will read to them. All right, so I'm just going to put in here yoga door. Not a great thing, but it'll work. All right, and the last thing we're going to put in here is align equal right. Again, as mentioned, that's a hack. All right. Now, I'm going to save this, okay, and I'll come right back to it, but I'm going to do a run, and I'm going to open it up in Chrome. There's my picture. You should be able to do the same thing. If you had any kind of problem when you tried to do that, please go back and look at this. That's all on the top there, and make sure that you've set it up correctly. If it doesn't show anything, you might have to put in images slash yoga door, depending on how, exactly where that particular file is. Please, one more time, look up on the screen here. Do you all know this? That right here, if I go and click here where my images are, that shows me the path. So you can look on your path too, because if your path is goofed up, all right, so yours might have to say images. If yours says images slash images, you're going to have to put that in there twice. So did anybody have any problem with that one? I don't mean to go too nuts over it, but we're going to be doing this 3 or 4 times. All right. So I'm taking for granted, no one said anything, so I'm taking for granted that right now, this is what your homepage looks like. We aren't done yet. We haven't added, the flower or whatever the heck it is they have on there, etc., but we added an image. Please remember, I'm going to guarantee you of this. In one form or other, this is going to be on the test tomorrow. All right? That is, the source tag is required in an image tag. I'm sorry, the source attribute is required for an image tag. Pretty much, the alt tag is required because, again, what you want to do is you want to make sure that your image is available in one form or another to everyone. By putting in, as we did, by putting in the width and the height, all right, by putting those in, we make it easier for the browser because now the browser knows, had this been a very intricate graphic that took a while to load, the browser knows exactly how much space to put aside for it. All right, does all that make sense? And again, that align equal right was, as I mentioned, pretty much just a hack that we put in there. All right, and the last thing, if you look up on the screen here, the order in which you put those in does not matter. Most people tend to put source first, but it's all over the board, and it really doesn't matter. All right, the only thing you don't want to do is forget one of those. All right, so everybody's caught up, correct? All right, so let's go back then. And it says here, okay, so save and test. You'll notice a few final touches, etc., including the dark image and the lily image and the header are missing. It says you'll configure those so that thing with a flower in it we'll put in at step 5. Because we're going to do it once. Doesn't it make sense to set up the heading once and use it on all 4 pages as opposed to setting it up 4 times? Sure, to me it does. And what you'll find as a developer, I don't care if you're a programmer, that you're doing C# or ASP.NET or Java or something else, or you're a web developer. The least amount of code that you can do to do something, the better, because there's a chance, if you were, or let's say the sole programmer for a company, not only do you create the code, you maintain the code. And if I can maintain 100 lines as opposed to 500 lines, I'm going to take the 100. All right, so that's first thing. Then the second thing, now we're going to we're going to work on the classes page. It says there it's common for the content pages of a website to have a slightly different structure than the home page. So what they showed you here is that's what the home page looks like. That's when we get done. Again, we don't have this part done, but everything else that's in here is done. So what the author says here is quite often you'll find that the pages outside of the home page don't look exactly like the home page itself. That pretty much is true. All right. So it says this right here, this thing that you see right here, this is known as a wireframe. All right, that thing that's right there. All right, where the mouse is going nuts in here. And you can use, there is software that you can use to create a wireframe. Sometimes what happens is, as a website developer, somebody creates a wireframe for you and gives it to you and says, Ethan, now create the website based off of this wireframe. So the author's trying to show you what this is going to look like. All right. So it says, launch an editor, open the classes.html page, which we're going to do in just a minute. Configure a div element to display the yogamat.jpg image. All right. It says, as shown in the wireframe, this div is located within the main element. Code an opening div right after the main element tag. Assign the div to an ID named hero. All right. Code an image tag for the yogamat image. Make sure that the height, the weight, and the alt are set up. Next, code a closing div tag. Save it and test it. So again, I'm going to grab all of this. I'm grabbing every bit of that. I'm going to copy it to the clipboard, just like I did before. And now I'm going to open up in here my classes page. And just as I did before, I'm going to add everything that I'm supposed to do here. I'm just going to put it in there. All right? I find it easier to do this, and it doesn't really take much time. Oops. All right, so configure a div, and it's located within the main element. So it's going to be right after the main element. So there's main, so I'm going to put a div in here. All right, and I'm going to close the div right away. An advantage that you get using brackets, and I know I'm not using brackets because it just doesn't show on here as well. But the advantage that you get if you're using brackets is when you put in the opening div tag, it puts the closing one in for you. It's not that that's that big a thing, but it's kind of nice. And I think it said right away, assign the div to have an ID named hero. So there's my div with an ID equal hero. All right, so that's the first thing I want to do. So configure a div to display the yoga. It's got to be the yoga mat image. And I think we said that that was 900 by 300. So there's the yoga mat. And indeed rather, it's 900 by 300. All right. So code an opening div, we did that, assigned that. Code an image tag for it. Be sure to include the alt, height, and width. So there's nothing in there at all about using any kind of a line. Okay? So I'm going to come in here, code and put in my image tag. And as we did before, I'm going to say the source equals, and mine again is under images, slash yoga, what was it? yogamat.jpg. The width is going to be equal to 900. The height is going to be equal to 300. The alt will be equal to, I'm just going to say, yoga mat. All right, that should be everything. I'm going to save. I'll come right back to it, but let's run it. Okay, doesn't like something. That's okay, we'll fix it. Images slash, it's not yoga mat, it's yoga mat. Okay, let's try that again. Go back and refresh my page. All right, that's looking better. Again, not perfectly lined up. We'll work on that when we do the CSS later. Okay, but for now, that looks pretty good. Okay, in other words, at least the right thing is in there. Yours may not look exactly like this, and that's fine if it doesn't. Yes. Okay, it's going to go away when we do step 5, or it should. Yes. Okay, again, make sure you spelled it correctly. And what you should be able to do is go back to your image folder and double-click on the file, on the actual JPEG file, and if it comes up, the yogamat.jpg file comes up, it's not corrupted. If you double-click on it and it comes up with an error, then it is corrupted. So if you double click on it and it comes up, either your path is incorrect or you didn't put in yoga mat. You put in something else, like I put in yoga mat. Yoga. All right. Still? Okay. it's drawn a line all the way around, I'm not sure what that is. I think it'll fix itself. Did that fix it? Tiffany, did that fix it? Yes. Well, one thing is, let's see, get rid of all those semicolons at the end. None of it. Before you even run it, let's take a look at this here. Okay, do you have that in an images folder, or do you have it right on the?
I've got it right.
Yeah, but that's not the same place. See, okay, your Yoga 4, double click on your Yoga 4. Okay, now.
Put that in here.
Take your images and drag it into Yoga 4. Right, that's the first thing. Now go back to this file right here. And before you've got the Yoga door, put images /. All right, save it and try to run that one.
There we go.
Okay. Yep, you have to do the same thing. Okay. You've got it images. And where is your Chapter 4 folder? And your images are okay. So double click. And are the images there? Yep. Okay, go back. Go back to your HTML file. Okay, it's IMG, not IMAG. So change that. And there's no ending there. Okay, so save that. Now try to refresh that page. Was that the one we changed, or was that the other one? It's still not finding it. See, that said you were Chapter 3, but this one says, what you just showed me is your Yoga 4. Oh, I just meant to make a whole new folder, but that's okay. Is it in here or is it in here? There's the two files. It's just not pathing to it. That's a problem that most of you will have, is just a pathing problem. All right, to make sure that something is exactly where you think it is and you put the right path to it. I mean, it's very natural to have problems with that. Everybody does at some time or another. You know, all right, so I did configure the div, I put all this in there, and I added the closing tags, so as far as I know, that stuff's all done. So right now, if I take a look, if I start at my index page, there's my home page, there's my classes page. And again, this isn't perfect. It'll be fixed in just a few minutes when we add some CSS to it. Okay? All right, so to my knowledge, we have completed task 1, task 2, and task 3. Okay? So what's left is task 4, where we're going to create a new page, and task 5, where we do the CSS. So let's look at task 4 before we do anything. It says use the classes page as a starting point. So what we're going to do in just a second is we're going to go back and literally copy the classes.html page to a new page and call it schedule.html. Does that make sense? So on our pages right here, this is what we have right now. Okay? So I'm going to right mouse click on classes.html, choose copy, and then paste. There's a lot of ways you can do that. And instead of calling it classes copy, this will be called schedule. Oops. This will be called schedule.html. Did I do that too fast? Am I right in assuming that everybody can do that? Because I don't want to make, if I'm wrong, I want to know. I asked you to make a copy of the classes page and call it schedule.html. If you go and run the site now, the classes and schedule pages are identical to one another. But we're going to fix that in just a minute. Does all that make sense? So again, if I come up and run my index page, there's classes and there's schedule. They look identical to one another right now. We will fix that in a minute. All right, so I want to bring up the schedule page. Okay? First thing we want to do, if you look up on the screen here, is we want to double click right here. However you're naming these pages, instead of calling it classes, we want to call this schedule. Okay? Please remember to do stuff like that. I have worked with so many people, so many students and professional people over the years. Oh yeah, I'm just creating a whole bunch of stuff I got to do later. Don't do it later. Do it when it's fresh in your mind. That's the time to go and make changes that you want to make. All right? So that's the first thing, is I've changed that. Now let's go back and let's look on here. There's a lot of stuff. It says change the title to an appropriate phrase. I already did that. So I'm going to grab all of this stuff. I'm going to copy it to the clipboard. And again, I'm going to just paste it in here. Whoops. So I'm going to go back up to the top here. And as I've been doing, I'm going to put in a comment. This is a lot of junk. But the good news is you're just pasting most of it. All right? So modify the image tag. So the only thing we have to change is we have to change it to Yoga Lounge. Okay? Remember, it's the same size as the other one was. So in our yoga tag down here, that said yoga mat, I want to change that from yoga mat to Yoga Lounge. Remember, it's the exact same size. All right? I'm just going to save it. I'll come right back to it on here, but let's look and see what we've changed. There's home, there's classes. Now notice schedule has got a different picture in it. You should notice the same thing on yours. All right? So I've got that done. Then it says replace the H2 element that says yoga classes. Have it, instead of saying yoga classes, have it say yoga schedule. Well, if you look up here, there's yoga classes. Everybody see this? They want this to say yoga schedule. Okay? And I don't know what I did right there. All right. Now, please look up on the screen. The next thing they want you to do is this description list, this whole thing, they want it gone. So highlight that whole description list that's in there, that's got the different kinds of yoga, highlight it all, and hit delete. Now, if I bring the page up now, the page is going to look a heck of a lot smaller, because that's all that's in there. We'll fix that in just a minute. All right? But that should make sense to you, what we just did. So I'm again going to go back looking at my comments, so I replaced the H2 tag, I deleted the description list. All right? So the next thing they tell you to do, it says configure a paragraph element with the following text. I don't want to type. So I'm just going to, highlight all that. That's one of the reasons that I copy the stuff in like this. So I want to come back in here now and bring in that paragraph. So that's here. So I'm going to put in a paragraph tag. And then I'm going to, I'm going to copy that in. Now it's pretty long. Some people like to break their stuff up. I like to be able to see everything on the screen that I'm working with. So I have a tendency to do this. You don't have to do that. Some people just throw everything out there, and even if it goes off the screen, it's totally up to you. But you probably don't have the same copy and paste facility that I have available to me. So I'll give you a second to put that in. Let me come right back to it, but please look up on the screen. So notice now what we have, just a little paragraph. And we're going to put the schedule in next. So I'll leave that up there. We're going to finish this step. It'll take about 5 more minutes. We'll take about a 10-minute break then. We'll come back and then we'll add the CSS. We should be able to do that in about a half an hour. There are many people that when they create a website, they put garbage text in there. I showed you that lorem ipsum, which was some garbage text. I like to put in something that at least somewhat is indicative of what the site will be about, because to me then it starts to look the way the site's going to actually look. Not everybody agrees with that. Any questions on anything we've done up till this point? All right. So the next thing we're told to do here is to put an H3 element in. It says configure an H3 element with the following text. So we want to put an H3, and I do want to show you this because this is pretty darn important, just so you know. Everybody see this? Right there, it doesn't, what's highlighted, it doesn't look like it's a very big thing. I think that's called an M dash, but I could be wrong. Have you ever done this when you worked with Word? And I'm gonna put a word in there, and it's going to have a hyphen in between them, so I'll put like well known, for example. But instead of putting it all together, I put well space hyphen known, and I hit the space bar, and all of a sudden the dash goes from this big to like this big. It doubles in size. Web pages can have a problem with that big dash. All right? So I'm going to manually go in and change it to a small one, just to make sure it's a small one. So I'm going to put an H3 element now right below where I just was, and I'm going to add this. Okay, so we stopped right here by the div. So after the div, I'm going to put in an H3. I'm going to put in Monday to Friday, and I'm going to end my H3. I will tell you this. I don't want to be a hard guy, but if I want to teach you this the right way, I have to be a hard guy. So for lack of better words, this isn't a threat. It's a warning. How's that? So this is a warning. All tags from now on, except for doc type, which is up to you. All tags, lowercase only. If I see anybody else who puts like a href in uppercase, the only way that I can make you do it is to take off when you do it. You're all getting really good now, as far as I could tell everybody who turned in the assignment on your zip file, you didn't put any spaces in there, so that's good. So this is the next thing on our journey, so to speak. All right. Then after this, we're going to put in an unordered list. So I'm just going to start to put that in. All right, and you should know by now that unordered lists are filled with what? With list items. And I think there's about 5 of those. I could be wrong, but I think there's about 5 of them. So I'm going to set that up. Again, if I save this and run it, it's not going to look like much. It's just got these dots right here if you look on the screen. That doesn't look like very much. All right, and we'll get rid of those dots in a little bit. But this is what I want to put in there. Are these 1, 2, 3, I guess 4 dots is what I needed. All right, so there's my first unordered list. I'm going to actually put in a couple of them, but this is the first one. Okay, copy that in. Then I'm going to just throw this into here. Just give me a second and I'll give you some time to key it in. Again, I don't want 5 of those. I only want 4 of them. My error, I apologize. So I'm going to get rid of this last one that's here. Okay? So that's where we should be. So what we've added in here so far has been this. Make sense to people? Again, we're just following the steps in order that the author had put in here. All right? So now, and I'll come right back to it, but now we're up to here. See how it's starting to look a little bit nicer? All right. It doesn't look great yet. Won't look great for a while. All right. Here's a quick little quiz for you. Please look on the screen here. ID equal hero. When we put that into our CSS file, what character do we have to put before the word hero? What do you use for an ID? It's a pound sign. What do you use for a class? It's a period. All right? Because mixing up a class and an ID are things that people do all the time. When we get done, we're going to put in yet another was this supposed to go below that? I guess it was. That should go below the paragraph. You know, we're not turning this in, so it's not really a big thing one way or the other, but that's the way that it should look. We should have the H2 that says yoga schedule, then the paragraph tag, then the H3 tag with Monday through Friday, and then the unordered list. All right. If you put it in that order when you go and run it, it should now look like this. That's the way we want it to look. All right, I'll leave that up there for a minute. Again, we'll put the other one in, and then we'll take a break. All right. Now, if you look up, if you don't look up on here for a second, this is what we just added, right? An H3 tag, an unordered list with 4 items. Everybody see that? Well, what are we about to add? What do we have left? Wow. An H3 tag that says Saturday and Sunday, and an unordered list. So if I want to, I can go and type all that stuff in again, or I can just copy my H3 and my unordered list that I just put in. I can copy it down and then make changes to it. That's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to grab that H3 and that unordered list that we just put in here, and I'm going to paste it in again. So this now says Saturday and Sunday. All right. Why did I do this? What's this called and why did I do it? Right there. Somebody who doesn't normally answer questions. How's that? What is that? Pardon? Yeah, it is an ampersand, but what there's a general name for it when something starts with an ampersand and it ends with with a semicolon like that. It's an HTML entity. All right? And there are several of them. So we want to say Saturday and Sunday here, and now we want to grab all of this stuff. So I'm going to have to make changes to this schedule because right now it's wrong. When I get all done, I'll leave it all up there so you have plenty of time to copy it in. So those are the two H3 tags, and those are the two unordered lists. All right? If I've done it correctly now, when I run this, notice, oh, that was interesting. I thought I saved it, but I didn't. So you can see how it's coming together. All right? So I'll leave that up there. Does everybody have the stuff that's up here with a paragraph, etc.? Does everybody have that? All right, then I'm going to go down to here. I'll leave that there. It's 8:58 by 9:10, so that's 12 minutes. Try to get this keyed in and take a break. All right? When we get back from the break, we've got step 5 to do, which is it, and that is to add our CSS. Okay, so there's about 9 steps in there, but I'm hoping we'll still be done around 9:30. Even if you're a slow typist, please try, I think at least it's important that once an hour like this, you get up, walk around. Even if you walk upstairs and downstairs, you need something to keep your blood flowing. Okay, the one
There's something.
the one we're doing right now?
Yeah.
Okay.
My CSS must be off.
Yeah, that could be, but go back to your page first, because the page itself looked kind of funky. First of all, it did look like it was centered. Okay, can you go to the HTML for that page, please? Is that the only one that looks like that? Or do the other ones look like that too? So click your home page. Yeah, it does look like it's a little bit funky with the, oh, we'll get it fixed. Okay, go back to your HTML. So let's look at what you got in here. Go back to this, the one page you just created, the schedule.html. Okay. That looks fine. That should be a closing tag. That's the one that changed the periods though. That looks fine as far as I can tell. Yeah, and then, so, that yoga schedule, that should actually, you've actually got that up there, you don't need that, you can remove that whole column. All right, but you're right, I think that what you just said, you get rid of the beginning part too. You're right, it does appear as though your CSS is funky, for lack of better words. I'll tell you what I'll do. Right now, I'll email you, just you, I'll email you my CSS file. And you can bring it in there and see if that fixes it all and gets it back again, okay?
So my schedule page will run whenever I redo it or whatever, but it
Uh-huh.
doesn't link.
It doesn't link? Well, are you sure when you saved it? Look at the name of it. Make sure that you called it schedule and not schedules.
Hold on,
Or-
I don't know. It's
Okay, sometimes you just have to reload it.
yeah.
You know, you might have made a change. See, that's a really good point, but just so you know what happens, what it does is occasionally the browser will take its own liberties and it'll cache, which means it'll copy your page in. If you don't reload it, it'll keep running that copy that's in there, even though you've made changes. That's why you click the reload button, so that it refreshes everything.